Hello, I'm Victor Vergara, Leader Urban Specialist from the World Bank. We're going to talk a little bit about the key challenges to urban infrastructure. And we'll be focusing on some very core challenges. We'll be looking at demographic challenges, socioeconomic challenges, technological, environmental, and financial. Let me then begin by talking about the demographic challenge. To anyone that has been in developing and emerging cities, you know that a critical factor is the rapid rate of population growth and the difficulty of providing infrastructures at the same pace of that growth. In fact, infrastructure is always lagging behind. So the rate of population growth is fundamental. At the same time, you have the overall population number, the large population living in cities, and the needs to increase the efficiency in urban infrastructure. So both the rate and the overall size. And in that context, you have the combination of factors yields the fact that you have a risk of marginalizing and the extensions of slums. That is that cities generally and sadly grow through slums, slum creation. And this fact is in fact what we want to address by reducing slum formation and increasing the ability of the city to accommodate growth in places where basic services are indeed provided. So the demographic challenge is fundamental. In many places, however, many cities don't have good population estimates. And even the very basic data is missing on population. The next is the socioeconomic challenges. And here we have many challenging issues. The first is the need to have progressive policies that are pro-poor, and that they address the fundamental preference for the vast majority of the population that is in fact needing assistance. Policies also need to be gender sensitive. In our cities, most of the cities have been designed for and by men, and is reflected in the way that infrastructure is structured and provided. A new generation of urban planners is emerging that is taking into consideration the needs of everybody, including and foremost the female-headed households, which in fact define in many ways the cities and the household structures. In this way, we need to provide affordable housing for different groups of citizens. There needs to be a housing policy that enables housing markets to work for everyone, including those that have limited resources through subsidies that motivate the efficient provision of housing close to where people work. There's also the issue of safe drinking water, fundamental. The issue of mobility. Without adequate transport, cities cannot grow properly. It's fundamental infrastructure. However, transport and mobility is a derived need. It's not the need, it is not the fact that should define a city. Land use should take into account and have as its backbone transport. But it shouldn't be the other way around. Transport should not be defining the way a city is shaped and formed. Larger prerogatives should be used for defining how the city should grow. Fundamental issue is waste and wastewater management. In many cities around the world, we talk about, the first thing that people talk about is whether or not the city is clean. And it really is all about the foundation of public health. If you have a city that is not clean, you have problems of public health. And finally, the issue of energy. Cities require energy to run. And if you don't have availability of energy throughout the city, productivity is very low. All this comes together in the need and access for employment, access to jobs, which is fundamental as a socioeconomic challenge. Technological challenge, fundamentally cities without infrastructure. How do you retrofit a city that does not have the right infrastructure? Our estimates, and others as well, come to the conclusion that retrofitting a city can cost between 3 to 8 times as much or even more than designing a city properly from the outset. So it is bad business to create bad cities with infrastructure that is not proper. The other issue is aging urban infrastructure. When infrastructure is not maintained regularly and it ages, and actually there's no asset management systems, cities come into problems very quickly. And the fundamental issue of technology and infrastructure is the interdependence of different infrastructures, a holistic view of infrastructure. One cannot consider simply one service without considering the others. Good urban planning, good city management requires services to be thought through as in a holistic manner. Next, the environmental challenge, which is linked to infrastructure. But I'll focus on a couple of points. First, the resilience of urban infrastructure to face environmental shocks. Many of us remember the problems that New York City faced several years ago with Superstorm Sandy, a city that was once heralded to be, in many ways, storm-proof. Well, it wasn't the case. The storm came through and it devastated the city, and it created a great deal of reflection on something that the Regional Plan Association calls fragile success. It is important also to address the issue of climate change and the reduction of carbon emissions of cities. We all know that this is a big issue now, that the international community is trying to address it through dialogue and the consensus. The role of cities is fundamental. The last challenge, and we should always look at finance last, not first, because finance follows function, is that we need to provide more and better infrastructure, typically with limited financial means. So we need creative financing. We need to leverage existing local financing. We need to ensure that we are, in fact, leveraging the increased value of land as cities grow. We need to also manage the competing needs of available land. And in many cases, this is land that is unserviced, that has unmet basic needs, and it's very complicated to prioritize among services between water, mobility, housing, and other services. And fundamentally, we need to generate a sustainable revenue stream for the operation and maintenance of urban infrastructure. In many cases, you have approaches where capital expenditures are, in fact, well conducted, the infrastructure is provided. However, there is not enough revenue to actually maintain that infrastructure. And without that maintenance, it decays, comes into a repair, and the services begin to collapse. And we see this, sadly, in many of our emerging cities, and principally in our metropolitan areas where there's limited coordination among local governments. So let me try to summarize what we have been discussing. Several challenges contribute to the quality of urban services as it relates to infrastructure. The demographic challenge, with a rate of growth as the principal issue to address. The socioeconomic challenges, with the imperative to have progressive policies that address poverty at cities as the center stage there. Technological challenges. How do you address the provision of infrastructure once the city is already built without right-of-ways, without the ability to actually introduce it? Environmental challenges, climate change and resiliency, and finally, financial challenges. Finance follows function, and cities look the way they're financed. So let's then consider that as the contributing factors for the quality of services, but without better management for urban infrastructures, you will not be able to translate meeting those challenges into quality urban services. I hope this introduction has been useful. We will look at it in greater detail with the rest of the MOOC, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.